that history in any one place. So it was really neat for us here at Fellowship to kind of capture that last 10 years of really how it's evolved. And I don't think it was ever really written down anywhere, you know, but you can tell Nate where his passion lies, because, you know, it's deep down inside him. And
yeah. And when he started wiping his eyes a little bit, you could tell, you know, how much that meant to him and how deeply involved he is.
Yeah. All right, Stan, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. So whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, let me say, I can see 6 people. Raise your hand if you've been to Toman with us. Anybody there? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, great. Well, I want to say thank you for doing this virtual mission trip. And really, I have to say, not only is it great what you're doing right now with the virtual mission trip, but we're going to end up, it's so good the way y'all are doing it, as you do everything we've discovered. You do everything so well when your teams go to Haiti. We love having you there. You'll be a model that we're going to be able to do this with other teams, all because you've done such a super job with it. So thank you for how you've done this. What I thought I'd do is just give you a little background specifically about Toman, since that's where you guys are working. You saw in the email a little bit of the background, how we started down there when I'm not going to rehash all that, but I was pastoring at First Baptist Church of Jackson, Mississippi, went down after the earthquake and got involved as a result of seeing the incredible devastation, seeing the tent cities where there were thousands and thousands of people living. And as a result of that, the goal from the beginning, and that was back at the end of 2010, was to build one sustainable community for those who were still living in tent cities. So we set out to do that. We began doing that. And what happened was, in relation to Toman, was Pastor Monterine. We were introduced to him from the beginning. He was one of the first Haitians I ever met. And he started working with us. So he and a guy named Vladimir, who kind of has his role down in Galles-Chambon, they were with us full time. And so the more I got to know Pastor Montre, and I'll tell you, he's pretty sharp. If you hadn't figured that out, you know, he speaks English, Creole, French, Spanish. Well, at the time, he did not speak English, but he was working with us. But he figured it out. If I'm going to continue to work with these folks, I should probably learn English. So on his own, he went and took a course. And I noticed every time I was coming down there, I used to go about once a month, that his English was getting better. And see, because prior to that, whenever he and I would go somewhere, maybe go to Port-au-Prince to get supplies or whatever we were doing, we'd have to take a translator with us because I couldn't understand him. And all of a sudden, one day I realized I don't have to take a translator. His English has gotten so good. Well, through that relationship, we were having teams coming on Saturday and then leaving the next Friday. So what we would do was, because they were going to spend all week down in Galles-Chambon, we wanted to give them a little taste of a different part of the island, particularly way up in the mountains. So we would get up, they would come in on Saturday, we would get up early Sunday and drive up to Toman. And there we would go to church in the old church, you know, that kind of yellowish old church over there. And so that, and then they would have a lunch for us, and we would kind of walk around and let our team see a different part of the island. And so then we would come back down and spend the rest of the week in Galles-Chambon doing the work that we did. Well, this goes on now for a couple of years. And one day I was up there and I looked at Pastor Matry and I said, Pastor, I said, I've got a dream that God is going to allow us to build a hope center up here in your village. And he looked at me and he said, oh, my pastor, he said, I have the same dream. And so from there, we didn't know how this was going to work. Because, you know, if you've been up there, you know, it's a crazy haul getting up there and the road's terrible. How on earth would we build that giant hope center that you've seen that's on a hill, as you know? How on earth would we do that? And so we came, we interviewed Pastor, we interviewed some other folks, and we just believed that this was what God wanted us to do. And so while, and our organization is called But God, right? And so God shows up in impossible situations, which is where he does his best work. And so I just believed that God somehow was going to name it. And all of a sudden, he starts bringing all kinds of people to bear. We had 13 professors from Auburn University standing on that spot where the Hope Center was built to help us, all from building science and technology. And they helped us design. They helped us make sure we did it safely. One of the key professors worked with Jacques, who was our builder at the time. And so God just brought all of that to bear. How on earth would we have? I mean, I'm from Mississippi. What am I doing with 13 Auburn professors sitting there on that property, all in building science technology? And so through that, we built the Hope Center. And along that time, did any of you ever meet Terry Warren? Are y'all familiar with Terry?
Yeah.
Terry.
So I met Terry when we first visited Nate and Pastor Dwayne and myself. Before we decided to partner with you, we visited there, and Terry happened to be there filling in.
Aha. Well, Terry and his wife, Kathy, Terry was a business guy. Kathy's a nurse, and they're from Northwest Arkansas. And they had come down, and they were our first missionaries when we built the Hope Center. In fact, I sent one of my emails out saying, hey, we're building this Hope Center. It's going to be great. And all of a sudden, I get an email back from Terry Warren. Hey, do you have anybody who's going to move in and be the full-time missionaries? I think we're supposed to be those full-time missionaries. And sure enough, he came in for a year and did a tremendous job. And so once we got there, you probably figured out we work in 7 areas known as spheres, S-P-H-E-R-E-S. We work in spheres, whether it's in Gallatin-Bone, whether it's Tomon, or the Mississippi Delta. And so, and what's beautiful about this, y'all, God allowed us, and he showed us how to duplicate our efforts, okay? So Gallatin-Bone and Tomon, they look physically different, right? They're in 2 different places. The buildings look different, the structures, but yet we're just working our spheres, because we believe that all 7 of the spheres are necessary to have a healthy community. Whether you're in Tomon, Gallatin-Bone, the Mississippi Delta, in Colorado, or London, or Paris, it doesn't matter. They're all necessary. And so I thought what I would do, just by way of a little background, share with you where we are and how all this has evolved. So the S in spheres is the spiritual. So what do? We work through pastor's church. And so we would go to the old church, and it was just falling in, and we couldn't fit everybody in there. And so we had a church out of Brandon, Mississippi, who they just like to build church buildings for whatever reason. So we were able to build the new building, which was just really enhanced the increase the number of people who can come, the more people who are hearing the gospel, who are being discipled. And so we really tried to do Bible studies in and through, the local church. And do worship times there. And so, but then building that building was really important. The P is physical, which for us is medical dental. And of course you've been there, and we have 2 things going on now. You have the clinic, which was the first thing, with a full-time Haitian doctor. And what's crazy about this was, what were the odds of us getting a doctor in Tomon who grew up in Tomon? I mean, he has to be the only one ever. And so all of a sudden, he knows the people. He knows the community. He knows the culture. He knows when they're saying one thing, what they really mean. And so, so he's there, and we're able to employ all kinds of people. And then, of course, we met you guys. And y'all came and met Eric, met Nate, and then the whole mobile medical unit has been remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. And so that's just another means of sharing the hope of the gospel, sharing the love of Christ, and just expanding that up into people who just were not receiving any love, any care, certainly not any medical care. And so that's the physical. And we have a dentist who comes once a week as well. I don't know if you're aware of that. We have a dentist who comes to the Hope Center once a week. So SPH, H2O, that's our biggest challenge, as you know, how to get clean water. We thought we had a plan. We still have a plan, but we haven't been able to do it yet. R is roofs, as you know, and I think y'all built a house or 2 there. We've built approximately 100 houses now. It's so exciting, 100 houses. If you ride up and down the main road, you're going to see houses, and they're painted in bright Caribbean colors, and people's lives have just been changed by having a safe place where the water doesn't come in, and where they can close the doors at night, and they're not sleeping in the mud or the dirt. And so over 100 houses have been built. And then the other E is, one of the E's is, the first E before that actually is education. And you're probably aware we now sponsor 468 children, okay? Now there are, 900 something total going to the schools, but we're sponsoring 468. And that's an incredible story. Started with Terry Warren, I told you about earlier. And Eric, I'll try to move through all this, but it's one of my favorite stories, and it's the story of the faith the size of a mustard seed. What happened was, pastor had started his little school there, and he was just doing it on his own, trying to let children be educated. And he talked to Terry Warren one day, and Terry said, well, Pastor, before Terry moved there, he said, I sponsor a child through Compassion International, and I sponsor one here in Haiti. So their headquarters, I've looked it up, is for Haiti is in Port-au-Prince. I'm going to go there tomorrow, and I'm going to tell them all about Toman and get them to start sponsoring kids up at your school. Oh, yay, that's going to be great. So he goes the next day, he has his meeting, and he comes back to the Hope Center there in Galles-Chambon, and he's got a sad look on his face. He said, Pastor, I've got bad news. They said they're not going to be sponsoring in that area, and so they're not going to do it. And he said, but I was talking to Kathy here, my wife, and we could sponsor some children. He said, well, how many could you sponsor? I said, we could sponsor 3. And he thought Pastor was going to be really disappointed. And Pastor said, well, if you can do 3, let's do 3. Terry goes back home to his church in Arkansas and tells his pastor about it. His pastor said, why don't you just go ahead and add 20 to that list? Because our church will do 20. All of a sudden, we went from 3 to 23. And God begins to grow that and begins to bless that. And all of a sudden, they get up to 90. And that's when we build the Hope Center. And finally, I said, Terry, here's the deal. We're going to have teams coming up there, and they're going to be seeing these children. They're going to want to sponsor these children. Let's just fold this incredible program that you started. Let's just fold it into BGM, and that way we can carry it on, and it'll, be a lot easier and that sort of thing. So we did, and we went from 0 to 3 to 90 to now 468, having added a school in Machias. Children living in the middle of nowhere. You can't even get a vehicle there. And children are learning to read and write. And that's so important because, as Pastor said in that video y'all saw, there were people up there, most of them couldn't read. Well, now all the children can read. The third graders can read. And they gave them all Bibles. And what good would it do to give somebody a Bible if they can't read? Well, now they can read. And all throughout Toman. And so it's just really exciting. The other E is economic development, and we think that's extremely important. And I was just jotting some notes down here. We employ full-time at the school 68 people, 68. At our clinic, there's about 8 people. John L., our builder, we helped him create his own company, right? And he builds everything there for us. He's got about 8 or so. So then there's all the Kinterrison and the other Blaze and all the others. So there's quite a few people who have jobs being able to support their families there. And so we're really excited about that. So these are some of the things that have been going on. And one day when Pastor was here not long ago, I asked him, I said, Pastor, are the people of Toman, are they glad that BGM came to their village? He said, oh, my pastor. You know how he talks, oh, my pastor. He said, they are so glad. He said, you remember when, he said, you remember you and I were sitting on the first house that was the steps of the first house that was built in Galles-Chambon. And you asked me, you said, how many people in your church have a job? And I told you about 4 or 5 people. And you asked me, how many people in your church can read and write? And I said, maybe 10%. He said, but Pastor, if you go there now, there are lots of people with jobs. And there are lots and lots and lots of people who can read and write, and more, hundreds are learning to read and write every day. And I love how Pastor, if you noticed on his on the interview, what he said, if you can't read and write, your view of life is like this. But once you can read and write, it opens up. And we all know it's true. And so these are some of the things. We're just working our spheres there. God has blessed. He sends people like you guys, and I will say this, and no, I don't say this to every team. You guys are one of the most organized, effective, and efficient teams that we deal with, and we love that. And then with the work with Nate is just amazing. So, Eric, those are some of the things that have happened, some of the things that are now, and when you want to, we can take questions now, and I'll talk about some future plans as well.
I was just going to make a comment on, the first trip that we made, and I can't recall the missionary who was what her name was when we went.
Laura.
Yeah. So when we arrived, Laura, we arrived on a Saturday, and Saturday and everything. And so then we woke up the next morning on Sunday, went to church, and we came back, and she's like, hey, would you guys be interested in taking a hike to the village? She said, well, you guys are from Colorado, and so most of the groups that we get are from the flatlands. And you guys probably know how to hike, don't you? You know, you can go on hikes and you know, we're like, well, sure, we'd be happy to go. And the funny thing about it is that was the beginning.
Wow.
Of that was the first step of you know, 3 years later, Nate taking 6 weeks and going up into the mountains and finding 23 villages and all that. That was the beginning. You know, she just we wanted to take a hike. Well, we did, and it was a challenging hike. You know, we weren't expecting. You know, the Haitians told us. So here's the funny thing. Laura was talking to a couple of the Haitians there, and she wanted us to go to Majan. And she said, so she asked one of the guys, how long does it take to hike up to Majan? And he said, oh, about 30 minutes. And she said, well, what if they take the truck all the way down to the river and hike from there? How long will it take? About 30 minutes. What if they drive all the way up to the base of Majan before they start the hike? Oh, about 30 minutes. So it's funny because
so Haitian.
No concept of time at all. So
Yeah.
then we go on the hike. So we go on the hike, and it was challenging. You know, as you know, most of the hikes around there are. And it was so funny because we had been hiking for an hour, probably, I think.
At least an hour.
You know, before
that one.
Yeah. Yeah. So and one of them, Pavla on our team, she's like, I just can't go any further. So we asked the guy, we're like, how much farther? And he looks at me and he says, I don't know. It's never taken this long before. Because he had, you know, Blancos with him, it took way longer than if it was just himself.
Hey, Eric, it's so funny you'll ask Pastor. Now, Pastor, how far is that? Oh, not too close, not too far. That's what he usually says. It's the best answer you're going to get.
Says all the time. Milus, you know, the driver for the MCU, that's what he says anytime we go anywhere. How far is that? Not too far, not too close.
That's it.
For sure. Questions?
That's great.
Yeah, questions about what Stan's talked about so far. All right, I guess you can keep going. No one's asleep yet.
All right, well, you won't be the first people I put to sleep. Well, let's talk a little bit. We've seen what's happening. God has just done amazing things to get it to this point. And it's so neat to look back, and I think it's important to do that, to look back and to see where we've been, how God has brought us. And because to me, that always gives me courage, and it increases my faith that, hey, he's done this before. There's no reason I shouldn't keep trusting him. And I know sometimes God probably wants to say, why don't you trust me more? Look what I've done in your life and the life of this work and the life of the people of Tomon. So as we think about the future, in fact, Pastor was here in country just a few weeks ago and Eric, I would love for you and maybe some more to come. You know, on September 16th, we're having our 10th anniversary, a big celebration. And we're inviting teams from all over the country. It's going to be right here in Mississippi, in Madison, Mississippi. And it's going to be great. And one thing we're doing, we've got we're making right in the middle of a 45-minute documentary on the history of BGM. And so we would love for some of you to come and be there for that big night of celebration. But Pastor came in town, it was a few weeks ago, to film for that documentary. And so we sat there and we talked about, you know, where are we going? We love what God has done in the past, but hey, we're not going to sit around on that. We got things to do. Where is God leading us in the future? What are some things? And, you know, there are several things that are coming up. One is on one of those long hikes. I don't know if y'all went to Malafi, which is above the school. You know where Pastor lives, right next to the school. If you hike up about 2 hours, that's American time, about 2 hours, there's a village called Malafi. And so we've already raised the funds, and we're going to be building a brand new school for that village. We're so excited because if you go up there right now, their school is in one room, mud floors, little old benches that, oh my goodness, they're falling apart with no backs on them. That's their school. And so we believe we're going to build a school just like the one in Machias. And so not only will it be a school, of course, 5 days a week, but the community can use it for other things as well. So that's coming, and we want it to be open by September when school starts. So that's a really, really big deal. That's coming.
Hey, Stan.
Yeah.
So not only have we hiked up there, but when we were there last month, the medical vehicle made it all the way to Malafi, and that's the first four-wheeled vehicle that's ever been in the village.
That was incredible, you know, because you guys and Nate have been telling some of these villages, if you want the mobile medical to come, you're going to have to get the road ready, fix the road. And now 2 villages chose not to, so they're not going to get the care. That's their fault. But Malafi chose to do it, and so it's funny how all these things work together, Eric. They were getting the road ready because you guys had told them to, you know, that would be helpful to get the mobile. But now, because of that, it's going to be easier for us to get supplies there to build the school. So it's funny how all that works together.
They're already getting, the clinic already started. The mobile clinic's already been up there providing care.
Love it. Question for Eric.
Yeah, hold on, Stan.
Is Malafi the one we went? We just did like a little medical clinic.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's the one where Troy was with our team, right?
Yeah.
So when Troy met the little boy, remember up in Malafi? So
and the little boy riding around on the donkey. And,
exactly. All right, we're good.
Okay. Another thing that Pastor is very, very interested in, and he and I filmed a little segment when he was here a few weeks ago. I don't know if you've noticed, but what happens a lot of times there with the children, they may be sponsored in school, but then all of a sudden, Dad leaves, okay? And Dad may have another family, you know, several hours away. So he leaves. He'll have another woman with other children in another location. And then Mom's kind of desperate, so guess what Mom does? She leaves and goes somewhere too. So that will leave a child there with an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, someone who really was not prepared to take them in. So ultimately the child is just abandoned, right? And so even though they're sponsored, there's no adult getting the child up to go to school. If they do make it to school, when they get home, there's no adult to help them with their homework or make sure they do their homework or make sure they get a meal at night. And so they end up these are just people who fall through the cracks, children who are abandoned. And Pastor brought up the idea 2 years ago to me about a children's home. I said, that's not what we're going to do. And I was very much opposed to it at that time. But God's timing, of course, is everything. And so he's continued to talk to me about that. This problem has not fixed itself. Children are still hurting and suffering. And so we have some preliminary ideas that we would build a children's home very close to the Hope Center. And if you're facing the Hope Center, the main gate would be to the left and back behind those houses. And then we would have build, because you'd have to have a wall naturally down there, but you would have a dorm room for up to 5 boys, a dorm room for up to 5 girls. You'd have a big kitchen area, a big open area, kind of like you have at the Hope Center, you know, where you gather to eat and all. And then you would have a room for maybe like a house parent of some sort. But the thought was you would then have 2 cooks. You would have a cleaning lady, and then you would have 2 ladies that might stay, house moms, like from 6 in the morning to 6 in the evening, and then 2 more that would stay from 6 in the evening to 6 in the morning, just 2 shifts. And so 7 people would get jobs as a bonus of all this, but you could drastically impact the lives of abandoned children. And so my board so far seems to be feeling good about that. We have a board meeting coming up in a couple of weeks, and we'll see where that goes. But that's really on the table right now.
Is there what's the current situation in Galie-Chambon? Is there children there?
Say it again.
In Galie-Chambon, isn't there a?
Yes, there's an orphanage there as well, and
so
there are 16 children there.
Okay.
And so the circumstances are a little different there. It's highly unusual. You know, it's there as part of BGM, but it's really not ours. A group from Pensacola, they put it there, and we partner with them. And so this would be one that we will have started, and just a big need there, and that need has not gone away. So that's one thing, a possibility. Another possibility, what we want to do is, you may have read today about the professional school that we're starting down in Galie-Chambon. Well, guess what? There's a professional school that meets right there in Tomon. And guess who runs it? Pastor Mottering's sister. And recently, I think back in May, they had their graduation, and she teaches sewing and baking, okay? When we say professional school, it's like what we would call a vocational school. And so what we could do is, and cosmetology. She does those 3, all right? And so they had a graduation this past year in our new cafetorium. with the full regalia, the whole 9 yards. But what we want to do is add some of the construction trades to that. And see, and this is important because understand this. If the schools in Haiti go to 13 grades, not 12, you go to the 13th grade, which they call philo, right? Well, we've been adding a grade every year since we got involved in Toman. 7th grade, then we add the 8th and the 9th. Well, guess what? This year, we just finishing the 12th grade year. Next year, this fall, we'll be adding the philo, the final grade. So the question becomes, what do those students do after that? Well, we want to have a couple of options. Number one would be this professional school that they could attend. And then the second is a few who might want to go on to university. And there is now a university down in Font-Prison where you turn off the main road to go up to Toman. There's one there by Love a Child. And so so there will be some. So we want those two options to be available for people. So we're very excited about that. Also, do y'all remember the computer room that's there at the school in Toman? And you remember Georgia Tech came, their electrical engineering, and made the building solar powered. And so there are computers in there, laptops. And, you know, it's one of those things that happened about 2 years ago, and you're just hoping it's going to last, right? You know, I hope it's not a thing they use for a month or two, and then it just kind of falls to the wayside. Pastor said they're there every day. They're rotating all the upper grades through there. They're taking tests on it. They're doing all kinds of things. What we need now are more laptops. And so that is working. It is functioning. Those that room is being used every single day. In addition to that, because of we built the cafeteria and we tore down 2 classrooms that were in the middle. You may recall those 2 classrooms. Well, now we've got to build 2 more. And so we need 2 more classrooms to get through the philo class to come through there. So hopefully we'll be able to do that before the fall starts. Also up in Malafi where we're building the school, the new school, we have funding to build a house there. It'll be the very first house built in Malafi. And so we're really excited about that. The first family will get a house. And all of a sudden, think about this now. There's already a church there, right? And so hopefully the church, they'll be sharing and teaching the gospel. Also the children, this is the holistic approach. All of a sudden the children can be educated. All of a sudden the mobile medical is coming once a week. They get education. And now the housing situation begins to increase, to get better. And so you see how that's all working together, God bringing his people there to make a difference in the lives of all these folks. And so we also, one dream I have is this fall to start a seminary type situation for pastors in the area. There are books out of, I've seen them used in Trinidad. There are books out of a group out of Atlanta that does them all over the world. And there's like 8 different books. And one book is like Survey of the Old Testament. One is Survey of the New Testament. One is Pastoral Care. One is Church Administration. And so they're like 8, one's the Pastoral Epistles or whatever, the writings of Paul. So anyway, they're like 8 different courses and they each last a semester. So, and what's great is they're all standalone. So for example, if you start in the fall, right, and then you go from say September through December, and then when the spring semester starts from January to May, say you're a pastor and you can't do that. Well, you can pick back up in the fall. It doesn't matter. Just whatever course is offered, you can take it. And later on, you can pick up the one you missed. And so we're going to have to be able to provide the material. It won't be terribly expensive, but we're able to provide the books, the materials and things like that. And when the pastors come in, we'll see if we do it maybe 2 days a week or something like that. We'll have to hire a teacher to lead that and to teach that. And then, and if some of them coming far away, they might could stay at the Hope Center, if we don't have teams, something like that. But we just think it's very, very important for these pastors to come, to be encouraged, to receive training, and go back and teach the Word of God to your people, and that's what's going to make a difference. That's what's going to make a huge difference. But think about if you don't have any training. You just left to your own devices. How horrible is that? And so we're really excited about getting this seminary started. And then we want a full-time dentist. Pastor's son just graduated from college in the States. He went 2 years to Arkansas, to where Terry and Kathy Warren live, went to junior college, finished there, moved to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where William Carey University is, a fully accredited Christian university, and he just graduated in May. And the original plan is he'd become a dentist. We're not sure how that's going to work, but at any rate, we do want a full-time dentist there. And if it ends up being him in a few years, how great would that? You'd have a dentist and a doctor who grew up in Toman, doing medical care there. So that'd be hard to beat. So those are some of the things that we're looking at in the future. We'll continue to build houses all this time. We'll continue to educate children, sponsor more children, employ more people, and hopefully get our teams coming back. Will be great. Any questions about all that?
Well, Stan, as you were talking about the teaching people, to be able to go and preach the gospel to their own, it reminded me of when Nate and I were there. It was so amazing how we were in the background, because now the Haitians were treating and caring for the Haitians.
Oh, yes.
It wasn't the white man coming and doing something magical.
Right.
My cohorts here in Haiti, educated in Haiti, getting the resources they need to get to the villages, and that's 100 times more effective than us coming and providing medical care.
Absolutely. It's far more sustainable. And Eric, I haven't told Nate this, but there's a doctor out of Wisconsin who owns a bunch of clinics, and he supports the mobile medical to a great extent. Okay, each month. He's very, very heavy hitter on that. Well, I sent him y'all's interview of Nate.
Yeah.
And about, 2 hours later, I got an email back from him. He said, Stan, I sure do love the work Nate's doing. We're so glad that my wife, Jody, and I can be a part of this, a small part of this, he said. And I'm really interested in some of the things he's talking about that he wants to do, such as another ATV four-wheeler, such as another mobile medical unit, such as a medical malnutrition specialist who would go with the team every week. And I think I could put a big dent in that cost every month. And yeah, how about them apples? And so, and of course, I thought 2 words, but God. And this is a guy we've never met, by the way. This is how God is funny. Years ago, how's a guy from Wisconsin involved with us, right? Well, years ago when I was at First Baptist Jackson, we had a statewide broadcast. We also had a national broadcast on DirecTV. But turns out our statewide broadcast was on channel CBS affiliate. And turns out, I didn't know this, but affiliates from around the country can just pick up other broadcasts, like for off times if they want to. Well, for some reason, this CBS station in Wisconsin picked up the affiliate in Jackson, Mississippi, and would show our services of all things. And he would watch. And so I thought, so he starts sending a little money. And so I would try to communicate with him. Nothing back. Send him an email. Nothing. Try to call him. Nothing. But he would just keep on sending some money. Well, this went on for years. And he won't ever respond to me. Well, Dina came on board. She's our development director now. And we're supposed to be in the conference room one day having a meeting. I said, Dana, come on, what are you doing? And all of a sudden, she's on the phone with the doctor from Wisconsin. And she's got her door open, y'all. She said, that's right. This goes on for an hour. This dude who would not say, speak to me, spoke nonstop to her for over an hour. And before we know it, he's more involved than ever. He's so excited. But I'm going to tell you something. The people who get involved get blessed too, because Jody, his wife, about 6 months ago, she was diagnosed with cancer. And so he reaches out to us and shares that. We've been able to pray with him, and Dina's really walking through this process with them. But this is not only something that they love doing together with BGM and the mobile medical, but it's kind of a distraction in a good way, that there's not just have to sit there and think about their cancer all day long. They're still able to plug in and to make a difference in people's lives. And so because you guys sent teams down there, because you guys sent Nate out, because you guys helped get this mobile medical, some doctor in Wisconsin is engaged sharing his blessings with some of the poorest people in the world. Isn't God something?
Yeah, that's the truth. All right, anybody got questions?
When can we get back down there?
Yeah, that's the big question, Stan. When can we get back in on the island?
Well, that's not looking as good as I thought. I don't know if you're aware of this, but you know, the problem is the gang. The biggest problem from between Port-au-Prince coming out. And I don't know that if we've shared this fully, but in Galley-Chambon, where we are, when the team gets on Saturday, we usually take a big hike. It's flat, but we walk all through the village. And at one part, you come out up there, kind of the village square, if you will. And there's always been a little store there where a guy sold Coke. So we'd stop and the team would buy some drinks and things. Well, the gang went in there, I guess it was last week or week before, murdered the husband and kidnapped his 8 and 6-year-old children. And so it has demanded like $200,000 US for ransom. It's awful, awful. So when you want to pray for those 2 little children. Pray for we understand the wife, she's about to have a nervous breakdown. Literally, they thought they were going to have to take her to the hospital. Her husband's gone, her 2 children are kidnapped. It's just pure, awful evil. And so that was kind of the worst ones. And, you know, and we keep thinking, what's it going to take to wake people up? I mean, is that not bad enough? What worst thing needs to happen to where somebody somewhere with some type of civil authority would do something? And so, as you can imagine, we would never bring a team. We're just not going to do it. As I tell our missionaries, we want to live to fight another day. And you know, when it's a little bit safer, because in the meantime, the work can continue through our locals, right? I mean, by the way, we communicate with them every day. I've been talking to Pastor Mottering today. We communicate through, you know, Facebook Messenger, texting, and all kind of ways every day. So the beauty of us, by the way, when we had to get out, we felt the need to get everybody out was, it kind of forced our hand, particularly in Galley-Chambon, where our missionaries have been the entire time since 2011, really. It forced our hand to say, hey, did you really create a sustainable community, or did you not? Did you train up leaders, indigenous leaders who could take over and do the work that needs to be done? And I'm so happy to report the answer was yes, because right now in both locations, Haitians run our clinics, the doctors and the nurses, and down there we got lab techs and everything. They run all of our schools, the principals, the teachers, the administrators. They build all of our houses. We're literally not there. And they're running the mobile medical unit, right? The Haitians are, which is what we always wanted. And so we're ready to get back down there because there's nothing like it. And as soon as we think it's safe, we're going to do that, but really not until.
Completely understandable. Anybody else? Questions?
I had a question. And you mentioned something about water and having a plan, but it's just not come to fruition yet. I know we talked about that several years ago, you and I. What is that holdup? What the plan?
That's a good question. What the plan was, we have some civil engineers here that are in my life group, actually. And we had a group of about 24 men who were going down. And you know, there's the big at the top of the mountain, which I've actually hiked up there, almost killed me one time, but I'd made it. It's an 11-hour hike. Oh, Lord, please get me down. It was awful. But anyway, so we get up there, and there's a spring, right? And years ago, the government did a pipe coming down to the town. You can follow that pipe all the way down to the main road. Well, it's all messed up. It's broken. And 2 of our guys went all along that pipeway, mapped out where all the breaks are. We determined how much pipe we were going to need. We raised the money, and we were going in to bring that water down that pipe. We were working out with the locals where they could, because what they'll do is all those villages along the way, they'll bust that pipe so they can get water. No, we're going to put in valves. Like, you don't have to bust the pipe. Just turn this valve. All you got to do is turn the valve. There's no need to ever bust this pipe. And so, but it was going to be a valve where you'd have to hold it, and then when you let go, it would close, right? So then the water would flow back down. And so we have what we think is a really fantastic plan. Civil engineers looked at it, gone over it, helped devise it. And then all of a sudden, that was like 2 years ago when the first big civil unrest took place. So that's the plan, is to bring it down from there through that pipe. We've looked at trying to bring water up from the river. That's not working. We've tried to drill wells. We've spent money drilling wells. Doesn't work. And so that's the only solution we see at this time, is to bring it from the source, which is at the top of the mountain. So the plan is still a good plan. It's still doable. We just got to, get to that point.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Apparently you answered it all.
Oh boy. Or put them to sleep one.
Either one.
Could we have our own T-shirts made up that say BGM's Colorado Hillbillies?
Go right ahead. Let's send you our logo. I'm ready to go back. I'm ready to go back when you guys are there. And there's just nothing like being there, being with the people, and to me, it's a little slice of heaven in that, the Bible says there'll be from every tribe, language, people, nation, and get a little foretaste of glory divine there, I think, when you get to go and be there. I can't wait to get back. I'm jealous of you, Eric, you and Nate. And I'm probably going to go soon and cross over that way.
It was pretty smooth.
Right. And, we can do that with one or two. We just don't want to do it with a team, of course. Because I've been across that border when it wasn't smooth.
Yeah.
Years ago, it was really awful, actually. But I'm glad you guys went. And again, I'm telling you, these videos that y'all have done, we're going to put them to use. Do I have your permission to use them?
You can use them however you want.
Great. Because and this will be your virtual mission trip will be a model for others. So thank you. As Paul would say, thank you for the partnership and the gospel.
We're just happy to be part of it, and we know that. I mean, we talked not too long ago about how, Nate and I just had the conversation, when we went back, how it was so obvious, and even Pastor Dwayne, how it was so obvious when we first visited that we were supposed to partner together. When we went up there, and just by happenstance, Terry Warren was covering, so as you could imagine, we were saying, well, Terry, tell us a little bit about this place. We're wondering if we should partner with BGM. Can you imagine what he did? He just, he barely took a breath for an hour, he just on and on and on and on and on and on. And
he loved it. He loved it so.
So it was, it was just, again, it was meant to be. And we're just excited to continue to be part of it. We just love the fact that it is self-sustaining and that things are still happening even though we can't be there.
Absolutely. And I do hope that you and or others will be able to come from fellowship on September 16th. That'll be so exciting to have you there as we celebrate 10 years of this. Will be great.
We'll see what we can do.
Great. Do you mind if I pray for y'all?
I do not mind.
All right. Let's do that. God, I come to you with Eric and with the team from Fellowship of the Rockies, and God's heart is just filled with joy and gratitude for the partnership that you have put together. And God, it was so obvious that you put this together, as Eric was saying, when they showed up that day, and of all people, Terry Warren, who had such a heart for Toman, that he was there and could share about what you had done already to that point. And so I just thank you for the men and women gathered here today. I pray that you would just shine your blessings on them, God, of the days ahead as they continue to serve you. I pray you'll give them wisdom and insight on best ways to continue to invest in that community, to share your love. Lord, I pray for Nate, and I thank you for him and his commitment and to the way you've called him to minister. Lord, I want to pray right now for the mobile medical unit. as they go out tomorrow. I pray it'll be a great day tomorrow. I pray they'll be able to share your love with all kinds of people tomorrow who will be blessed by their work. God, just thank you for who you are, for how you love us. We thank you for the sacrifice that Jesus made so that we might be called your children. Thank you so much, Father. And I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Stan.